It's Halloween season, ghouls, so crawl out of that tomb of yours and put on your best funeral attire, because we're gonna go over some of the best horror games on Game Pass to scream and crawl your way through right now. First up is the all-new survival horror Signalis. This is a sci-fi cosmic horror where you play as a robotic being known as a replica named Elster, who awakens from cryostasis on a wrecked ship. Stranded and alone, as Elster, you have to navigate nightmarish scenarios while solving puzzles, unlocking new areas, and traversing a dilapidated ship stranded on a cold and desolate planet. Borrowing from the roots of the survival horror genre, you'll have to carefully manage resources while also fending for your life from Silent Hill-like monstrosities. Personally, I love that Signalis captures inspiration from the PS1 Dreamcast era of survival horror, while maintaining its own distinct visual style and identity that it makes it appear as something more than just a nostalgic rehash. After all, survival horror is back in fashion, with remakes and refreshes coming around every single corner, from Silent Hill to Alone in the Dark and Resident Evil 4, which, by the way, we have hands-on coverage from yours truly, so make sure to check out the card in the corner if you're interested in that. Oh, and I nearly forgot about another big ol' remake on the way, Dead Space, which brings us to the next on our list. Sure, Dead Space is a 14-year-old game, but like a true classic, it stands the test of time exceptionally well, especially when it comes to its scares. Regardless if you've played this roller coaster of a horror fest or not, now is a good time to revisit it with its remake on the horizon. Based on our video preview by Jean-Luc Seipke, it's managed to make him, a veteran fan of the series, still very excited. With that in mind, it sounds like it'll be following the same beats as the original, but changes are being made to freshen things up, including giving the game's protagonist, Isaac Clarke, a voice.
They're out of fuel. The centrifuge is offline.
Who, in the original, was completely silent, until they gave him a voice in Dead Space 2. But until we can play the remake, one thing is for sure, the original Dead Space is still terrifying. In fact, we have a whole video breaking down why its scares are so effective. Card in the corner. Remake aside, Game Pass Ultimate also has Dead Space 2, which, like the first, holds up so damn well. And in the chance the second Dead Space gets the same treatment as the first with a remake, it'll likely be a while until that happens, so, in the meantime, you could, just play Dead Space 2, the original one. As for Dead Space 3, I don't know, depending on who you ask, there might be a difference of opinion on whether or not you should play it. I'm not going to tell you what you shouldn't do, but hey, no harm in just loading it up, as it is also on Game Pass. Just, don't expect the same horror of the first two. Just keep in mind that Dead Space is only included with Game Pass Ultimate, which gives you access to EA Play. If you have the standard Game Pass subscription, EA Play isn't a part of that, so, Okay, let's take a break from the space horror. No horror game list is complete without the seminal classic Amnesia: The Dark Descent, and its sequel, Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs. Now, these games need little introduction and are, yes, maybe oldies for some of you, but they are new, however, to the Game Pass roster. So this may be your first opportunity to jump in. Unless, maybe you've already bought them, but you haven't been able to finish them because you might think they're a little too scary, so you play with the lights on, and even then, you still can't deal with the scares, so you go to a public place like a coffee shop and play it there, but then you scream in public when you're being chased by a fleshy sack person with limbs, and then, I'm clearly not talking about myself. Really. But seriously, these games torment me. I fully admit here and now that I haven't finished the first, but I've tried many, many times because I do really love the story, the puzzles, and the grimacing atmosphere, but holy hot damn, they are very effective at messing with you. Nonetheless, the first Amnesia is emblematic of spawning an entire subgenre of horror games, leaving the player entirely powerless and having to run and hide from the monster rather than fight it. Nowadays, that just sounds like a mainstay trope in several games like Outlast and Layers of Fear, but a lot of that DNA is owed to the original Amnesia. Not to mention the entire era that spawned YouTuber Let's Plays of that game. Amnesia: The Dark Descent isn't just a pivotal moment for the genre, but online gaming culture too. While we're on the topic of frictional games, the developers of the first Amnesia, we of course have to include Soma. This one isn't in space or any sultry dungeons, but in the depth of the ocean, which to me is one of the most terrifying places I can imagine being trapped. In Soma, you play as one of the last standing members in the Pathos 2, an isolated underwater facility containing AI-controlled machinery. Things have gone a bit awry to say the least, and now you have to seek out its last remaining inhabitants amidst gruesome creatures, maniacal machines, and the omnipresent AI that's intertwined into all the facility's systems. This, like the studio's previous title, is about avoiding and outsmarting the enemy, as you're totally helpless against them. But unlike Amnesia, however, which featured inventory management like having oil for your lantern and sanity pills, Soma focuses more heavily on narrative, putting more emphasis on stealth and puzzle solving. Here's a game that isn't in space or not even underwater. In fact, it's more like a fleshy nightmare than anything else. Scorn is a disgusting labyrinthian trudge through the contorted, gruesome, goopy walls of an H.R. Geiger-inspired world. It is a skin-wrapped mystery where you're put in the body of an unnamed protagonist who suddenly wakes up in an alien-like world controlled by bodily technology. Everything is made of flesh, bones, skin, and guts, and I mean everything. The machinery, the environments, even the guns. And really, that's all the game gives you. It's just a matter of maneuvering the world, learning the strange tech, solving obtuse puzzles, and fending off these cute little fleshy pals. It's also quite a slow burn, emphasizing its world and environments over everything else. And all of this is punctuated with the lack of any tutorials, directions, or narration. You are very much dropped into this breathing nightmare and just have to find your way out of it. This game isn't overtly scary in the ways the others are on this list. Instead, it just oozes with an overtly graphic tone of gore and violence, and that is enough to solidify it on this list. The Evil Within series. I'm putting both of them on this list because I think they each serve an interesting place in the realm of modern horror games, with the second really taking some daring liberties and expanding the foundation of the first's mechanics. As a series, it's over the top and convoluted in its story that goes to some rather fantastical lengths, like entering unreal worlds and navigating a diverse set of locations while taking on monstrous foes and some really creative and terrifying enemies. It really leans hard into the survival aspect, favoring stealthy scenarios, picking off baddies while gathering supplies, to in turn craft traps or ammunition. Admittedly, I think these games are just okay, but I applaud them for being an over-the-top horror romp and their creative monster designs. The second one especially takes it a step further by bringing the survival into more open-ended sandbox environments. It's also got some really beautiful set pieces, but still very, very spooky ones. Campiness aside, The Evil Within is a must-play for horror fans, and there were plenty of scenes that still managed to make me crunch the controller in my hand as I navigated claustrophobic halls while outrunning scary beasts. Alright friends, thanks for cozying up to this campfire list of horror stories. I hope something here jumps out at you. So turn the lights out, wrap yourself in a blanket, and enjoy the frights. Happy Halloween!